Is it 6? All right, good evening, everyone. We will call to order Town of Cedar Point Planning Board meeting on Tuesday, November 5th. The roll call, TJ Williams.
Here.
Michael Castellano.
Here.
Bill Davis.
Here.
And Joe Murillo and Brad Smith are absent this evening. So we'll kick off with new business, rezoning request RZ 2024 tax 03. This is a request to rezone a portion of the parcel at that address on the agenda from B3 to MC or Planned Mobile Home Park. And I believe this is the same property we've been looking at recent past where they're looking to build some amenities. So David, you want to give us an update on the request?
Yep, absolutely. Application is submitted from the same applicant on behalf of the Bogue Sound RV Park. This is a substantially different request than the previous one, both in terms of the zoning district that's being requested as well as the location of it and the size significantly. So you'll have in your packet the application itself, including the rezoning letter. I'm not going to read through all of that. It's there for you. We did send out notifications as required concerning this meeting and did post the signs on the property. Answering the questions, what's being requested, the applicants are requesting a portion of the property there at 1204 Cedar Point Boulevard to be rezoned to MC, which is our basically mobile home and planned RV park zoning district. The applicant responds to our second question on why the rezoning request is necessary, in that the property owner is proposing the addition of a few amenities within a section of the lot for their community residents. They would like to rezone the lower section of the front portion of the lot from the existing B3 zoning, in particular the section that is generally to the south of the new entry driveway for the RV park, to MC zoning, thereby adjoining with the MC zone comprised by the rest of the RV park further to the south. This area includes the pre-existing non-conforming office building, pool, and its associated parking sidewalks. We also propose to include the pre-existing non-conforming laundry building, its associated gravel parking, and the portion of the driveway separating the two areas in the rezoning to MC. Let me go ahead and just kind of highlight that for you. You can see the drawing here. To orient you a little bit, here on the left-hand side of the screen and the page is Cedar Point Boulevard. On the south would be Bridge Point Circle, which is now the name of the road in between the entrance to Bogue Sound RV Park, and Bojangles would be south on the bottom, the opposite side of the road here of this little road at the bottom of the page. The area that they're asking to rezone is what you see here in purple, and it connects with the existing MC zoning of the remainder of the park. I'll pull up an aerial as well just to orient you there. So let's close that out. So below this kind of imaginary line where I'm drawing the mouse across, from here south is currently zoned MC, and the area that they're asking to rezone will be from the new driveway entrance that starts somewhere in this general vicinity to include this area and over here south of this driveway. This driveway here is basically staying in place, and except it's just rerouting over here to Bridge Point Circle and doing away with this entrance. So this general area. Get us back on the screen here. To the question, in your opinion, how will the rezoning request be of benefit to you if approved? The applicant responded that the rezoning request will benefit the residents of the Bogue Sound RV Resort by providing amenity areas for the residents to use while preserving the ability to develop the rest of the front portion of the lot, generally to the north of the new entry driveway with traditional commercial development of the B3 zoning. Question on how will the town of Cedar Point and or the community benefit from the rezoning of this property? The applicant responded that residents of the Bogue Sound RV Resort community or residents of the town of Cedar Point will benefit from the amenity areas being proposed in this section of the property. Additionally, all residents of the town of Cedar Point would enjoy the benefits of any future development that would occur in the B3 portion of the property and be part of the commercial corridor. To provide a little background and history on this, this is something that the planning board took a look at and was split on the decision to allow the previous request, which was a conditional B1 with the understanding that all amenities would have to be kept at least 200 feet back. There was kind of a line drawn on the property about 200 foot back. When it went to the Board of Commissioners, there was concern about whether or not that lot would actually be large enough to provide the type of commercial development that the town had envisioned, and ultimately denied the request for the rezoning to the conditional B1. So now the request is to bring it back a lot further and then rezone it to MC, which would allow usage of that area for general amenities of a RV park. From a town planning standpoint, looking at it, as long as they have a desire to keep that pool and office building there, that area isn't going to be redeveloped for commercial uses anyhow. This area off to the side here is part of their septic system. And then this over here is their laundry facilities, which is included in the application map as well. You'll see on that side of the driveway there and a little parking area associated with it. So as long as they continue using this area as they have been, which has been a grandfathered non-conforming use, it's not likely to be redeveloped for commercial anyhow. And if somebody was to be interested in that, I'm sure at that point, they could relocate it if the money was right, ultimately. So that is the request. And I have a couple of people online on Zoom with us, the applicants, Ashton Smith and Sarah Tyndall. If you have any questions for me or for them before we delve into the land use, comprehensive land use plan.
We want to give them an opportunity to make them.
Absolutely. Ashton, Sarah, do you have anything you'd like to add or clarify?
I don't think so. I think it's kind of we heard everything from the town and the Board of Commissioners and kind of pulled back and pretty much just took this non-conforming space and like, we want to put some horseshoe pit and a couple other amenities back on this side of the road, and that'll appease the residents, and we are still exploring kind of getting a shovel test done and poking kind of what we could do with the camo rags back on the back side of the property to kind of maybe put some more amenities back there. That's where we originally were trying to go, but some of the major camo permits was going to be a really, and what was happening next door was kind of really halted our client from pursuing that location. So I think this was a good modification for what we were looking to do, and we can fit a fire pit and a couple amenities in here around the pool and expand our pool deck out a little bit, and I think it'll work for the residents and still leave the majority of this front usable for a commercial tenant to come in.
Does anyone have any questions for the applicant before we move on?
Not right now.
All right. So next I'll walk you through our camera land use plan. Each time we go through the different goals and implementation, very similar to what you looked at last time. The competing interests on this particular project are ensuring land use compatibility. L1 utilizes the future land use map as well as the accompanying future land use factors map when considering any major development proposal, rezoning, or similar application for a change in land use or development in the study area. When we look at it, the future land use map, here in this area of that property, you'll see that it was shown to be set aside for commercial and office, that whole section. The competing interest on this is recreation. One of the reasons that the applicant is wanting to have this rezoned, as he mentioned, was to provide some additional recreational amenities there. And under our land use plan, goal of embrace recreational identity, to continue to improve and expand recreational opportunities in town, strengthening Cedar Point's identity as a recreational oasis. I think it's R7, to examine additional opportunities to expand recreational access to residents. So those are basically the same competing interests that we looked at last time. There's been no change in that. And as such, your proposed consistency statement addresses both of those, whether you want to adopt one that is indicating that the application is consistent because the town seeks to balance the town's competing interests in commercial development as shown as on the town's future land use plan and the expansion of recreational opportunities for the town residents. Or if you want to make the conclusion that it is not consistent because goal 1 states that the future land use map should be utilized considering a rezoning request and the property subject to a rezoning request is shown on the town's future land use plan as commercial office. So you have justification either way you want to go with this request. The bearing then is how much you put on the recreational aspect of it. I would add, outside of our land use plan, one of the advantages to the request by the applicants is to clean up something that's been non-conforming. Ever since the property was rezoned to B1, that little section has been used as a pre-existing non-conforming or otherwise grandfather use. And by changing that zoning in that little portion, you will make their office, their laundry area, and pool deck conforming under the ordinances, at least as to the use. I think there's still some setback non-conformities, but at least the use would be proper at that point.
And they wouldn't have to make any adjustments to accommodate the setback requirements.
No.
If they don't build anything new.
Right. Anything new would have to meet the setback requirements, but what's existing would not change.
Would anything new include something like a dog park, or it only has to be like a building structure?
So there are requirements for structures. I don't believe we have a setback requirement for a dog park.
Okay. And my understanding from the commissioner's discussion on this was, if I recall correctly, one, they felt important that that front area be available for business use. And the second element, if I recall correctly, was that they felt that the rear of the property was still the best area for recreational, and the applicant had not pursued it enough, if you will. They had not gone through all because they expected they were going to have problems, so they hadn't really pursued it as an option, and the board felt that they should do that first.
Right. And to speak briefly on this, and certainly Ashton or Sarah, feel free to jump in at any point, but the applicants realized that the request they made before to install a big covered pavilion and outdoor sitting area and all that is not suitable for this location. They're still pursuing that on the waterfront. One of the main objectives on this one would be to simply enlarge the pool deck itself for more sitting area around it. But the larger structure and some of the other amenities that they were looking at, they're still pursuing on the waterfront side. They would not be suitable for this area, mainly because that's where their septic system is, off to the side of the building.
That's right. We're looking to put a little covered patio with a grill next to the pool. We're gonna put horseshoes and bocce ball on top of the septic field and a fire pit in the area, and we are working with Tidewater and ECS on trying to see if what all is going to be involved with the CAMA permit, and see if we would be able to get by without going through the major CAMA and having an archaeological dig, because we have to have an archaeological dig. The client wants to avoid that scenario and having all the traffic coming in and out of the residents there. So we would not want to move forward with putting anything back there if something was found, but we are moving forward with exploring that further right now.
Group and good comments, Mr.
So for my
Go
little
ahead.
brain purposes, trying in essence to incorporate the amenities that are there now into the MC zoning, which would then require conformity in the future for any more work in there. At the same time, then you're reducing the size of the B3 zone, although we have road work going in there. And I assume that road would be available to whoever the B3 developed, because it's now a new cut or new dimensions. So we reduced the size of the B3. We haven't reduced it so far that it's not a B3 capable.
No.
Right.
No, there's still plenty of room. This request is substantially smaller
Okay.
than the previous
And at
one.
the same time, they're looking, can they do more on the water side if possible?
Correct.
Okay.
Looking at what people this up,
Yeah.
what is that F20 at the water?
That's actually an R20. So that
was the old
was,
homestead.
that was a separately owned lot that was later purchased. And has not been rezoned to. It's a pre-existing non-conforming lot as well.
Have you heard any talk about that being rezoned to MC also?
They haven't requested it, but
Is that where the old homestead is under Bridgeview?
yeah, the old homestead was sitting over
Way
here.
over.
Okay, and then for perspective, why, when we, as a town, historically, when we set up the different zones, B3 in this case, why wasn't that portion, we got the pool and the laundry facility, why wasn't that made MC when we first established all these zones?
So I can only speculate as to that because I wasn't here at the time. Bill in it was the owner of the park facility, and he was the one that had requested the rezoning of that at the time. He was also and is still the owner of this adjoining property.
Which one?
To
That one?
on the south west corner of it, this large tract here.
Uh-huh.
So I suspect he wanted it rezoned to increase the value of it in case he decided to develop it, knowing that he had the flexibility to relocate his office and pool anytime he wanted to, basically.
Okay.
But this property is still owned by Bill and Gloria in it, whereas this tract was sold.
Okay. And then but currently with the pool and the laundry facility, that is non-conforming right now.
Correct.
So let's say it's changed to mobile home. What else could they do on that lot beyond the pool and the laundry facility? What else is there that they could do besides, let's say, what's allowed in B3?
Well, the only uses, I don't know why my it's not wanting to move there. The only uses that are allowed in an MC are basically mobile home park and RV park and their amenities. There wouldn't be any other allowed uses in there other than what supports a mobile home park or an RV park.
Are you hearing talk about, so basically with the septic field pool, you're not hearing any talk about moving any RVs into that area?
No.
Okay. Okay.
Any other?
No.
I don't have any other questions or thoughts on it. Question proposed to us is whether to recommend approval or denial to the planning board.
Mr. Chair, I don't know that you have anyone in the audience that wants to speak to it, but you might want to just check to make sure.
Sure. Anybody from the public audience comments on this topic? Right.
Just a good habit.
We'll need a motion.
Go back up there with the consistency statement. There we go. Well, fine. I have no problem with this. Because the stuff's there, just really bring it into what it is to me. So make motion to approve the rezoning request. I can't read that. I should have brought my glasses. RZ 202403. As requested and with the consistency statement that is consistent with the Town of Cedar Point comprehensive plan. basically a motion.
Okay, we have a motion, is there a second?
Make a second.
Okay. All in favor?
That's unanimous. Thank you. Ashton and Sarah, I'll be following up with you. We'll have it scheduled for the upcoming Board of Commissioners meeting, I believe on the 19th. So Tuesday.
Perfect. Thank you all.
Yeah, thank you guys.
All right, moving on to the second is a text amendment TA 2024-04, a request to amend the UDO concerning car washes. And this is the same applicant who presented a request to the planning board last month. Last month, the planning board recommended to the Board of Commissioners to include car washes as a special use permit. And the applicant then withdrew and it never made it to the Board of Commissioners. They're bringing it back to the table with different wording today. So anything to add to that, David?
The only thing I would add is one thing that the planning board had added that the applicant had not was the inclusion of a B1 zone to treat the use similar under a B1 zone. That was something that the applicant did not ask for, and it is not something that they're asking for here. It was something that the planning board kind of took on its own initiative.
So we had recommended, I just don't recall, we had recommended it as a special use in both B3 and B1. Okay.
So the new application, somewhat similar, but I'll walk through it again. The section being addressed is section 6.2, use and specific standards, as well as the table of permitted uses. They're asking to add a specific use standard for car wash facilities. They included a document for the proposed standards. Just want to kind of highlight again why this process is being undertaken. Our ordinances currently don't have a specific use for car washes. There is a process whereby if we don't list a use, that we have to find the closest analogous use, which was that of a motor vehicle repair garage. And so by creating a separate use, this gives the board, the planning board and board of commissioners, the ability to look at that language and develop something that fits the town more appropriately than what a repair garage might. Two, describing your own words why the ordinance amendment request is necessary. The applicant responded, there are no specific use standards currently established for car wash facilities. Three, in your opinion, how will the car wash request be of benefit to you if approved? This will allow the use of a car wash in the B3 zoning district and proposed standards for our development, as well as any future development in Cedar Point. Or how will the town of Cedar Point and or the community benefit from the amendment? The applicant responded, this text amendment would create a use standard for future development in the B3 zoning district. So here's a specific language that was proposed by the applicant. It was included in your packet. It states the following specific standards shall be used in evaluating an application for the approval of this use. One, the proposed hours of operation shall be consistent with the predominant uses in the area. And two, an employee must be on site at all times during hours of operation. Three, the proposed use is prohibited on any parcel that is abutting a parcel that has an existing residential use or that has a residential zoning district unless separated by a public road right of way. Four, all washing, waxing, machine drying, and related activities and operations shall be conducted entirely within an enclosed building, except for pedestrian vehicular openings, with the exception of vacuuming, hand washing, hand drying, and hand waxing of vehicles, pay stations, and refuse storage and disposal. Five, noise mitigation shall be achieved with a minimum 3-sided vacuum pump enclosure. See detail 5.1. 6, tunnel openings shall not be positioned to face the primary street. For the purpose of this condition, primary street is defined as a public road that has the higher daily vehicular count. 7, landscape buffering shall abide by standards set forth in B3 zoning district unless an overlay district requires a higher standard of buffering. 8, when a parcel falls in an overlay district, the architectural requirements shall follow the standards set forth. I'm just reading through this. Did I include the wrong?
Yeah, you have the old one.
Give me just a moment. When I got to that point right there,
And this is the one that we were provided a copy of.
let me, give me just a second. I'm so sorry about that. There were several. Okay, I think this. Yeah, if you don't mind, just send it to me real quick. I had worked with the applicant on some of this language to make sure that it was consistent with some of the other areas of our UDO. And when I got to that point, I was reminded of the fact that we had removed some of that language because our overlay district requirements, our central business overlay district requirements would apply, so there's no need to add that additional language in this section. So that's what's going on there. I'll pull this up just a second. All right. Take two. There we go. And that's right, we put the specific hours in there as well. You guys should have stopped me. What's that? So here are the amended proposed provisions. The following specific standards shall be used in evaluating an application for the approval of this use. Number one, in no event shall a car wash operate between the hours of 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. This was changed to make it more objective than the subjective standard that was there before of whatever was reasonable in the area. Two, an employee must be on site all times during hours of operation. Three, the proposed use is prohibited on any parcel that is abutting a parcel that has an existing residential use or that has a residential zoning district. So it can't be beside either residentially zoned or residentially used property. All machine operated washing, waxing, drying, and related activities and operations shall be conducted entirely within an enclosed building, with the exception of vacuuming, pay stations, and refuse storage and disposal. For purpose of this section, an enclosed building shall mean a structure consists of 4 solid walls with appropriate vehicular and pedestrian access openings and a roof. A car wash is permitted to operate with a maximum of 2 vehicular accesses open during operation. Basically, to create your tunnel, they can keep both ends. They don't have to close it while somebody's driving through. 5, vacuum pump shall be surrounded on 3 sides with a solid enclosure in order and oriented in a manner to reduce noise impacts to surrounding properties. And there's a detailed drawing given. 6, tunnel openings shall not be positioned to face the primary street. For the purposes of this condition, a primary street is defined as the public road that has the higher daily vehicular count. And B, a minimum additional 10-foot landscape buffer consisting of 2 trees and 6 evergreen shrubs shall be placed across any tunnel opening facing public right-of-way shall be required. Trees shall be a minimum 2-inch caliper and evergreen shrubs shall be a minimum 30-inch in height at the time of planting. So increasing some landscaping requirements there. Landscape buffering shall abide by standards set forth in the B3 zoning district unless an overlay district requires a higher standard of buffering. Car washes in the B3 zoning district will follow the Class A landscape buffering standards. 8, building sides facing public right-of-way shall have a minimum 30% glazing requirement. No concrete masonry units such as concrete blocks or center blocks are permitted when visible from a public street unless they are textured to give the appearance of rough stone. Metal and vinyl siding shall be prohibited. 9, an oil water separator shall be installed in the drainage system, which shall be installed and maintained in accordance with the manufacturer's specifications and standards. And 10, car wash facilities are required to have an operational water recycling system. So those are the 10 conditions that the applicant is certainly willing to abide by and proposing to this board as things that the town should consider when examining both their project, when and should they decide to move forward with it, or any other project within the town of Cedar Point for a car wash.
Give the applicant an opportunity to comment.
It's good to see everybody again. My name is Matthew Taggart with Renton Companies. Being here last month, I think we got to learn a lot about what we really want this text amendment to look like. You know, we got some feedback from the planning board, and we really wanted to take that into consideration, come back before you guys and really make sure this is something that we can all be agreeable to and move forward and both benefit us and Cedar Point as well. The main things that we changed in there, like David had said, was really cleaning up the language, making it fit the UDO a lot better. Also taking into consideration the comments that came back from noise reduction, that came back from the landscaping. We wanted to address that through this text amendment that would be beholden to any future development if it were to come through. In regards to the noise reduction, so we offered what is a typical solid enclosure that goes around the vacuum pumps. Now the vacuum pumps run during hours of operation. That's one of the bigger noise makers there. And in the details that you can see, if you want to go to 5.1, you'll see just kind of some different variations that we're showing of how to direct that sound away from the public right of ways, away from pedestrians and things of that nature. So it's to really limit that noise, have it going up or away from the public. So there's a few different options based on where there's different vehicle per day traffic, and we try to accommodate the noise from affecting those particular streets. On to detail 6.1, you'll see, driving in on 24, there's a few car washes that are pointing directly, the tunnel's facing 24. So the noise is gonna go straight into traffic. If you're just sitting there, it's gonna be loud. So our intention here is make sure that that building is oriented in a way that it limits that noise going out to the major thoroughfare out there, limiting the noise to the traffic and the people sitting in their cars. We also added on there that in the tunnel opening, if it is facing a right of way, that there needs to be increased buffering with landscape. That's going to help mitigate the noise. All this is in a way to, David and I have had some conversations about this, just completely avoiding noise studies because the capabilities of Cedar Point to manage that after the fact aren't there. So I'm trying to find practical solutions and put something out there that's not going to be, a noise issue with noise pollutant, things of that nature. Those were the major ones. When it comes to like architectural stuff, I know that we showed you guys kind of a prototype last month. That was just kind of a base model. I've committed to David in phone calls originally before the October meeting that we're willing to work with you guys with whether it's putting shutters on there, storm shutters, giving it a more beachy vibe on the building that's visible. So we want to work with staff. We're committed to do that, to make sure that that's a product that we're proud of and Cedar Point is going to like to look at. That's my spiel for you guys. I'm happy to go through any of these. If there's any questions on them, we can kind of work through it together. And
Was there any particular reason that the previous request was withdrawn and not presented to the Board of Commissioners?
the main thing was, I think with conversations I had with David, we didn't like how it was written. I think it created too much vagueness. I think that's why the planning board decided on doing, we'll do a special use permit. Well, we wanted to make it very clear, very straightforward, the standards that are required. So a special use permit isn't needed. We're basically hitting those things on the front end. This is what's required of the car wash to come in. And that handles that, gets that special use permit process out of it.
So your desire is a permitted use and not a special use.
As long as you follow these standards, correct?
Anybody else have questions?
You want me to? Water usage. What's the average use, gallons, whatever, per year or something? Just,
I can give you kind of a daily number.
Okay.
On average, it's roughly 300 cars that will come through there, and what will happen is there would be 18,000 gallons of water that would be used for the day, and slightly above 50% gets recycled back into the car wash.
okay, so. Just popped into my little pre-brain. We're developing all this area. And West Carteret Water, or the water here, I have no idea what their capacity is. And it had nothing to do, I mean, this, not just this, but I'm talking about, at what point are we exceeding our water supply capabilities? I mean, it just popped in my little mind here. I mean, I'm not saying don't do it. I'm just saying, is there an issue with that? Can the water provide that support? That's just the thing off the top of my head.
So I will say one thing that we are kind of excited about to do when we start moving forward with our development is it is reclaimed irrigation water. So instead of spoiling 9,000 gallons of water every day on average, we're going to use that water to irrigate. So there's not going to be an additional imposition into the water that will come to that. It's going to be what's used for the car wash. The wastewater will get treated and then be turned into irrigation.
So I assume environmentally, the state, there's certain issues you got to follow.
Yeah, when it comes to, so in North Carolina, it is reclaimed irrigation water is allowed. You'll start with the county. There's some maybe some specifications and requirements that they may have on the system, and then you take it to DEQ, and then they would do the permitting of that system.
I assume we can do the same like when we dealt with GoGas, you know, for as far as appearance, what we're trying to do, what kind of options we have to make it blend in, like we did with the GoGas structure here, and that sounds good. I like that. It helps us blend in. It's like if people say you can't put a Walmart here. Well, you can make them blend in. I've seen them in other parts of the country, blended in. But water usage, environmental. It might come back to me. But yeah.
David, please remind us what for B3, what are the sign requirements? So I mean, obviously they can have for light, what are sign and lighting requirements in B3?
So in the B3, generally you're allowed wall signage and one freestanding sign on the property.
Mm-hmm.
Lighting, we don't have a B3 lighting standard. There are some requirements within the Central Business Overlay District, of which this property would be located in, that does require some lighting. It actually requires engineered lighting plan to keep the lighting under a certain level. I don't remember exactly right offhand what that is, but that would all be addressed at the commercial site plan review timeline. But there are provisions in place for both lighting and signage.
We'll cut off height requirements on the light poles if you have them, things of that nature. There's only so many foot candles you can have in the property line. So we would be fine by all of that.
David, I appreciate you working with them on the noise mitigation efforts, talking about architecture and then buffering, but any feedback for us on what other neighboring towns, whether Swansboro or Morehead City has for their text amendments? Because for us as a planning board in the past, when we've done text amendment updates, it's been generated by staff, presented, and then we would go work through it as a board here and then make that presentation to the commissioners. And so I just hesitant on a private business bringing this up and it not being self-generated internal by staff.
Yeah, so I went through and looked at some of our neighboring jurisdictions. Cape Carteret permits them in B3, permitted by right with no additional requirements other than some parking requirements. Swansboro permitted in their B1 and MI districts with some parking requirements, but no other requirements there. Same with Emerald Isle, permitted in their B and VW, which is their Village West, with some parking requirements. I checked in some other locations that you would anticipate maybe being more restrictive than us, such as Blowing Rock, Newbern, Beaufort, Chapel Hill, certainly, and Wilson, just to see how restrictive do some of the more restrictive places get. And the only one that really had anything that was, pretty significant, I think, would be Chapel Hill. They're strict on every single thing that takes place. So
What did Chapel
we're
Hill,
certainly we're no Chapel Hill.
what did Chapel Hill say?
So you can see I pulled this up today, Chapel Hill Code of Ordinances for car washes. Addressing no outdoor lighting after 10 p.m., 11 on the weekends. They do look at it as special use, minimum lot sizes, level of street that it has to front on, driveways cannot impede safe operation of an intersection. Talking about screening, car washing apparatus, similar to what we have. Demonstrate adequate drainage systems. We don't have, the capacity to do that. That follows the county health department and state permitting. And you can't put one in their water quality critical area. So nothing really any more substantial than what we're looking at. In fact, I think ours is a little more detailed since we do have other provisions dealing with outdoor lighting. Now, I'm sure just like us, they have other provisions that deal with parking lot landscaping, maybe some buffering in other places. But when I searched for the words car wash, this and parking were the only two sections that popped up. So, yeah, even your more restrictive locations don't have a whole lot.
What was paragraph E? And then F. So there's screen and everything?
The apparatus.
Mm. Got other questions?
The only thing I can think of, looking at the E and you mentioned parking, but sometimes, especially when these things are popular, the throughput of these, the flow of the traffic, if there's a lot of business that day, with measures to mitigate the traffic backing up on the street.
And from the concept plan that we have, that's been addressed where we have the actual entrance to get into the pay station well off the street to turn in, drive down a private road, and it's all the way at the end of the property to allow for a monumental amount of stacking that you would never get in a single day. So, we really try to be cognizant of a lot of those things in our design and really just try to be aware of the public and how to protect it. And
I figured that you had a plan, I just hadn't seen what
yeah. We kind of wanted to try to focus it a little bit more on the text amendment. I know that we do have something that we're looking to develop here, but kind of wanted to focus it primarily on this portion and then.
So we have an option to make this special use.
Well, we could probably recommend that to the Board of Commissioners. I think that's one of the questions on the table here is do we recommend this as a permitted use, and in which is it only B3, is it also B1, or do we recommend this with a special use caveat in B3 and or B1?
That's the way I'm just leaning towards B3 specifically, not B1, and then special use. That's my thought. B1 was just too wide.
And then what's the argument in favor of special use?
I just want to have it presented to the board.
Remote control, given the significance of the potential
Yes,
noise and whatever else.
yes.
Some locations work well, some don't.
And that's what we're trying to accomplish in here with the diagrams of everything, showing where, you know, we're gonna do everything that we can on the noise aspect of it. We're gonna position the tunnel in a certain way. We're gonna enclose the vacuum pumps. Those things are spelled out here and should be clearly defined. So if any future user were to come in, if they follow every single one of these, because they would be required to, those things are gonna be addressed already. So we really try to get in front of those things that would come up in special use and basically just say, this is your special use, you have to follow these standards, and that covers that.
The other thing, I mean, this town is trying to went and. Is it 88, 89? We've survived this long, again, I don't know the rush.
Mhm.
What's the rush?
Oh, well, all right, we'll just have to disagree on it. I have no, could care less, I don't use car washes. But I could say the same thing about storage units, and we have made them special use, and we got storage units, and I went through that argument a long time ago. About what we can and can't do, and we didn't make them storage units. Or if we go in, to my point would be, if we're saying we want to limit everything. If we're concerned about it to special use, then let's do that up front. How many other things in there do we want to be special use? And I don't care if this thing comes in or not, like I say, I don't use it, but what's the next thing that's gonna be special use because, well, we're not concerned. Or we have some concern. I have concerns about all the development. But as I was told once, you don't get to pick and choose the businesses that show up here. You can work with them, we can work with them to meet our requirements. But I think if, as a town, we're gonna go, everything's special use, and I'm not saying everything, I'm just giving my point here, then if it's special use, we just go, you can have this if the Board of Commissioners approves it. That's what we're saying. Now, we can put in there, we allow car washes if the Board of Commissioners approve it. That's a special use, correct? It's no other requirements, just there it is. So if we're gonna ask them to put all the restriction on it, I sort of agree. We're saying this is the requirement. If I come in and say special use, it's still the requirement, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
So why what makes it special in this case, that it has to be special use?
Because when we went through the matrix on what was permitted, what was special use,
Oh, believe me, yes.
Yeah, we went through that.
Yeah.
We went through that
I
long
understand.
use.
I
and we-
understand
we,
that, and we never thought about a lot of stuff.
We reset the matrix
Yeah,
and
I
car
could
wash was
understand
not.
some of it. Yeah,
car
we
wash was
never thought about a car
No,
wash.
we did add some things. We did consolidate some things. Car wash was not.
Mike
one
and
of
I
the-
get on here too.
But now that we've uncovered that there's a gap in our matrix, is the balance of the development, residential, coastal atmosphere that, okay, we do have a lot of permitted uses. We just don't want to open it up too much. We have an opportunity to either make it permitted or special. And that's the path that I've taken.
We'll just, I just look at it as. I understand how you look at it, but again, which is the next one we go? Here's a list of the requirements, but we're gonna call it special. Then we don't even need this. I mean, we can say, here's a little information for the commissioners, but we just said special issue. And you tell them what the requirements are, commissioners, correct?
For this, yes, and then whatever's on our matrix of hundreds.
We just
hundreds
said
of items.
special use with that, but we could tear that document up as far as here are the requirements, here are the things you gotta do to be able to do it. We just tear it up and whoever the commissioners are, at the next time, they make it up. Correct? We don't, our thing was, hey, to the commission. That's just my point of view.
Yeah, I mean, that's a decision for you all to make. Just a point of clarification. We do require a special use permit for many storage facilities within a B1,
Right.
but not within an LIW or an IW. We also do not require a special use permit for somebody that wants to put a motor vehicle repair garage in a B1 or an LIW. So, when you're looking at intensity of uses, I would say a motor vehicle repair garage is more intense than a car wash. Or can be anyhow. And we don't require that to be a special use. So just some thoughts to throw into your discussion.
I guess in my mind, the argument in favor of a special use, and maybe this would not be the appropriate use of it, but. If you had, if you were building a car wash. There may be some locations that are very amenable to it. There are others that may be fairly close to residential units, maybe not right next door, but. A certain distance too that would give the Board of Commissioners pause and say maybe that's not the best spot. If it's permitted use, they don't have that ability to block it, right? It's.
As long as it meets,
matches and
if it's a permitted by right and it meets all of the standards that are set for it,
it can be.
then it's a matter of just going through the commercial site plan process to check all the boxes.
And I think that's sort of where I come down to. I think that because of the noise issues, when you talk about a specific plot, it's easy to say, okay, on this one, we don't need to ask on this one. But if plot 2 is right up against a residential one, then there may be concerns with that and that. So it's just what's the likelihood of us having a run on car washes in the undeveloped places, and so that's where it's the new guy.
I mean, one way you can look at this to help you reach a conclusion one way or the other is we can pull up the zoning map and you can take a look at all the areas that are zoned
B1.
B3 and then determine, would
If it's a
these
concern.
standards be sufficient for these locations
That's good.
as they're drafted? If not, then that would warrant, a need for a special use. But if you feel that the language that's being provided would be sufficient to protect the town in any of these areas that are zoned, in yellow is your B3. So you're looking at, we've got one parcel here, right here. This is a new sports shop, by the way, so I doubt that's going to become a car wash. Couple of parcels right here, and then the bulk of it is around the intersection.
In front of Crystal Shores.
And then you've
Oh, you
got
mean with the dog barking?
one little parcel right here, and that's the entirety of our B3. Just so you know, it's unlikely that this one would be developed either as a car wash. It was just recently purchased by another entity that is not interested in a car wash.
And again, that's, going back to option number 3 on here. We can change it from abutting to within a specific distance of residential. If this feels like abutting is not encompassing enough, if we put if it's within 200 feet of a residential lot.
Well, the abutting rule would eliminate this one. That is by Crystal Shores, like I said.
Yeah.
It wouldn't fly, so. I don't see many others that are very close to residential.
So this is a sewer treatment plant right here. It would kind of eliminate this because this is residential. It's actually the pool for Marsh Harbor, but it's zoned residential. It would eliminate that one. It would eliminate these parcels, and then it would eliminate.
I don't think it's likely to be an issue.
Yeah, I don't.
I think if it were permitted in B3, it probably, as with all these restrictions, it probably would be just. Can you bring up the new list of proposed amendments?
Yes.
I just wanted to run through that one more time. There are some typographical errors and stuff in that, and that obviously cleaned up. The hours seem broad for a car wash, and I think the Swansboro one is open from 8 to 8. Is it the applicant's intent to run it from 6 to 10?
Typical hours, 8 to.
It fluctuates with time change. Yeah. In the evening, in the summertime, daylight saving times, they stay, what about 8 is good? They normally stay at this time of year, shutting down.
And scroll down just a little bit. It says here that a minimum additional 10-foot buster, is that in addition to whatever might be required at baseline, or is that because it's a B3 typically abutting another business, there would be no buffer? So is that just assumed to be a standard? 10-foot buffer.
That would be in addition to what's required from the B3 zone, so the class A
Okay.
landscape, whatever that class A landscape requirement is. It's
Additional.
10
All right,
to
I
cover
like that.
the tunnel.
I like that. It does specify,
Or street yard landscaping
Okay.
as well, it would apply.
Yeah.
That area as well.
it specifies landscape standards set forth in B3. In our UDO, it's also section 7.3, which heavily references, so maybe just want to add that.
Well, that's why,
It may not apply.
yeah, he
but-
indicated class A in there, which is in that section 7.3. I'll go down there so you can see it.
While he's doing that, can you comment on, I just don't understand, 30% glazing requirement, what is that?
It'd be like windows, things of
Oh,
that
okay.
nature to break up.
Gotcha, gotcha.
Windows or faux windows have that glass look to kind of break up whatever facade should be.
Okay.
You know, some of these typically, passed or solid brick,
Mhm.
or like that CMU type of material, so we want to make sure there's architectural breaks.
Our different buffer types under section 7.3. And a type A buffer is a vegetative buffer, minimum of 10 feet width, it will reach a height of 5 years and 5 feet within 3 years. And shall consist of 2 rows of planting material at least 4 feet apart. Within each row, plants shall be spaced on 5-foot centers. Or you can do a berm with certain requirements, or a combination of the two. Or if it would not be practical due to topography, they could do a fence, but that's rarely a necessity.
So some of the proposed wording on landscaping may conflict with some of the buffer A standards, like the height that it has to reach in a certain period of time or caliber. Would this take precedence?
So what it's saying here is under 7, the landscaping buffering shall be basically the class A that I just read.
Okay.
And then where there is a tunnel opening,
I see.
right, there will be an additional 10-foot landscape buffering that shall have these additional standards.
I see.
So you may have there are 2 different areas with 2 different standards.
Gotcha.
They're not conflicting with
Just
each other.
okay. Gotcha. Any comments from the public? Sure. And just,
I'm Greg Ferris, I'm a real estate agent, Clearwater Real Estate in Long Island. And, I've been to a lot of these kind of meetings in the course of my life. Developed Pierpoint West, Village of Maiden Bay. And what's wrong with just getting a special use permit and then moving forward with a plan? It's a special use and it's gonna be a very site specific and there's all kinds of different car washes as well. Shouldn't slow anybody down or border anybody, but I'm gonna see the site yet where it's gonna be put at. And I'm just saying that the normal process that I've been through, it's a special use, you do a special use permit. Go through, then submit the plan and the site, then you can do it. This, in my opinion, would eliminate possible competition or anything like that of various types of car washes that are out there. Understand what I'm saying? Is there any question?
No, I mean, it goes back to my stated my comment with, in the past, when we did text amendment changes, updates. It was generated by staff discussions in here. And it goes back to my comment, this town existed since late 80s. What's the rush? And then we've done a review with the matrix of permitted use and special use, so. That's been the basis of my comments last meeting and now this meeting.
thank you.
Yeah.
Any other comments from the public?
Can I respond to that? Because I do want to make it clear that there's no intention of singling anybody out on this competition wise. We believe in healthy competition. We like it. We think we have a very good product and we think it stands up. These were designed, especially with the help of David, to have a general but specific standards for any car wash that comes in. So if you're looking to do something in the B3 zoning, you'll have to look at the parcels that would work for, which is most of them, if not all of them, minus a couple that are abutting residential. So this is in no way designed to eliminate any competition or anything like that. This is to also keep us in check and make sure that we're abiding by the noise reduction, abiding by the landscaping increases.
More comments?
My name is Jeff Gaya. I'm the Chief Development Officer for Riptide Car Wash. I appreciate Matt working with staff and putting all this information together. The standards that we submitted are standards that are significant compared to what other car washes typically do. When we looked at this, we wanted to go through everything and go above and beyond restrictions that may not have been thought of by the planning board or any board. We spent a lot of time working with staff to come up with specific restrictions that would be long-term and viable restrictions for car washes that would allow people to be able to come in, but also set a first-class standard for this community and anybody moving forward. So our intent of that document was, let's work with staff and think of absolutely everything that we can think of that may not have been thought of in a special use hearing. So we did it up front and with good intentions to try to meet any sort of requirement that could have been thought of to make sure that it would be a smooth process. So that was our intent of that. And we appreciate you guys considering that. I understand that the special use permit, we're trying to avoid that and move forward with this project. And that's why we put that document together. Willing to answer any questions you guys have.
Dave, for my clarification again, if we go special use, and here are the requirements, these verbatim, that's the requirements, but it's a special use. What we're saying for us to a degree is we want to have the commissioners have control of, we can't necessarily put it in this B3. We can put it in this B3, but not this one, if it's special use.
Yeah, so when you look at a special use permit, the purpose for requiring a special use permit is to address subjective standards, right? When we draft ordinances, this is kind of where I worked with the guys there on some of their language here, was to pull out the subjectivity, right? Rather than saying reasonable hours, right? Define a specific time. That's black and white. It's easy for anyone to say, okay, this is in violation or it's not. So when you start talking about a special use, you then introduce the ability to interpret the language of the ordinance provision to say, okay, is it meeting this standard? Is it in conformity with the other properties in the general vicinity? Will it be a nuisance? Will it, all those sorts of things are very subjective. They give the town the opportunity to impose additional regulations. When you take language like this, right, you can leave this language in place and also make it a special use, which then says you have to follow all of these. These are the minimum requirements, but then the town can also impose additional requirements on top of that. Now, sometimes the issue you might run into that is, well, if you've required something very specific here, but it doesn't really fit that particular site, it doesn't give a whole lot of flexibility. Unless you decide to put some subjective standards in there, our ordinances provide for a limited number of already subjective standards that the Board of Commissioners looks at anytime that they review a special use permit application. And they're kind of generic, and I'll pull them over on the screen just a second. This is our application for a special use permit. Doesn't matter if it's a mini storage in a B1 or if it's a boat storage facility. That's special use as well. The standards that the board would have to look at is that the proposed use conforms to the character of the neighborhood considering the location, type, and height of buildings or structures and the type and extent of landscaping on the site. So they're already looking at, compatibility with adjoining properties and landscaping. B, that adequate measures will be taken to provide ingress and egress. Their design is to minimize traffic hazards and traffic congestion on public roads. The adequate utilities are available for the proposed use. That the proposed use will not be noxious or offensive by reason of vibration, noise, odor, dust, smoke, or gas. So that's the one that would allow the board the flexibility to require additional screening, buffering, any of that sort of stuff, if they so chose. That the establishment of the proposed use will not impede the orderly development and improvement of surrounding properties for uses permitted within the land development district. F, that the establishment, maintenance, and or operation of the proposed use will not be detrimental to or endanger the public health, safety, or general welfare. So here you're getting into the use, maintenance, and operation, so that, opens the door to address all those sorts of concerns. And that the use will be operating in compliance with all local, state, and federal laws and will not become a nuisance by creating criminal activity or public disturbance. Now, keep in mind this last one, if there is a specific provision, right, if you adopt all of these 10 provisions, right, and they don't meet all 10, then they are technically not entitled to a special use permit. Right, if the board says, well, we don't care about this landscaping buffering requirement, we want to do something different. You really can't do that because one of the conditions under the special use permit is that it is in compliance with even our own town ordinances. So there's no waiver provision, if you will, for these. So if this board wants to go with a special use permit, you may want to consider making some of these provisions more subjective rather than objective, so that you're not binding future applicants. But at the same time, if you want to not have a special use permit, then you want these as objective as possible.
Makes sense. Thank you, appreciate it.
And of course, the applicant's request is they specifically are looking for objective because that's the direction they want you to go. And then you have the other comment to look at the more subjective.
And from the perspective of the Board of Commissioners, do they have you gotten the sense that they have a preference in our UDO in general to avoid special use or be more aggressive with applying special use?
Well, the Board of Commissioners did ask this board to take a look at all of the uses previously and go through them one by one, with an eye towards reducing some that you and they felt were unnecessary to be special use requirements. But that doesn't have any bearing on this particular.
Right.
That's the one we did, going through the matrix.
Assuming there's no other comments. Gentlemen, motion, I think in general, everyone's in favor of the idea of the car wash, but
Before you make a motion, I'm not going to go through the all the provisions of the comprehensive land use plan because we did that last month.
okay.
For somewhat similar language, but I did provide for you for your consideration 2 consistency statements. The first one, the proposed language is consistent with the comp plan because the proposed use would be compatible with other uses within a B3 zone pursuant to the town's future land use plan and is consistent with the town's desire to maintain a small town feel. And alternatively, if you don't think that it's an appropriate language for a car wash, your desire is not to have a car wash in town or to make it very difficult, then you would say that it is not consistent because it would not be compatible with other uses within a B3 zone pursuant to the town's future land use plan and would not contribute to the town maintaining a small town feel. So we're talking about small town feel and future uses of the town. Either this use fits squarely within it as proposed or amended or not. So there's your 2 consistency statements.
See, I like, well, I like things as written, restricted to me, if I'm gonna have it. But, so we can get to here. And I don't need, and I'm not special use. If we're gonna have these restrictions, I don't see a need for special use. I think they're there. I don't know what one of the board of commissioners can come up with and go, oh. Other than, will it fit in a B3? And I think if we look at what our B3s are out there, there's only a few places that can go. With the restrictions written when you have residential issue. So. Mine would be whatever the first thing was.
To,
I'm getting my memories going. Run it
to
back up.
approve the language as submitted with the
Just
consistency.
a statement as written.
So the motion
That's just me.
is to approve the UDO amendment, the 10 points proposed, and to allow a car wash as a permitted use in a B3
Zone.
and the first consistency statement.
That would be it.
Is the motion. Correct.
That would be the motion.
We have a
I have a
motion.
question.
Yeah.
Is it possible at this point?
Can we open
That-
it back? There's a motion.
I can retract the motion.
You can retract it.
I'll retract it.
You're gonna have to say it all over again.
I will retract the motion and hopefully I'll remember how to make it.
All right.
And then,
It's just a point of clarity.
can you state, can you state your name for the
I'm
record?
Brooks Moy. And I'm an owner operator of car washes in the southeast primarily. I wanted to get some clarity as it relates to the B3 versus say a B1 zoning. In this case, it's only strictly going to apply to a B3 zoning, is that correct? Or can we take it to mean that it was also apply the same terms to B1?
It was not introduced in this
Yeah, what
motion,
B3
which is focused on B3.
Yeah. So having developed as many car washes that I have over the years, you know, the particular concern that I have about the terms of this proposal is fairly restrictive for this community. And there are variables to any given site that need to be taken into consideration. So I would just submit that you would take a little bit more time to consider the possibility that it might be so restrictive that it might limit competition in the area. So too.
So question for you is, so you're separate from this group right here.
I am.
So you two are competitors.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
Anything else?
No.
Okay. Thank you.
Back to
I'm gonna reintroduce it because I like the restrictions. That's me personally. That's I feel on it. That I recommend approval of text amendment or TA 2024-404 to amend the UDO concerning regulation of car wash with restrictions as written and as consistency statement, first consistency statement as written. Is that close enough?
and permitted.
And
use
permit, yeah, the
in
permit.
B3 only.
Yeah, I'm still vacillating. I mean, but I just go with those kind of restrictions. I have no problem with permitted use in B1 or in B3. B3. We're talking just B3.
Okay, motion on the table. Do we have a second? I will second the motion.
Okay.
All in favor? All opposed? Okay, so do we then open to a second motion?
Yeah.
Okay, open to another motion if someone would like to make an alternative.
Can I ask a question before that motion is made? What does the applicant, and I can't remember, I should remember this. Some people are gonna hit me over the head later. When do we go special amendment or special permit? Special use permit? What's the impact on the applicant for that? Other than it goes to the board?
What do you mean?
I want
What do they have to
to,
do?
what
What's
I
the
have to
burden?
do now, and I know
What's
they
the
have to come in,
burden?
of course, a special use thing, there's gotta be some money involved. And is there a timing thing, is it slow down certain processes, is it I'm trying to remember, because I know it's done, but I just can't.
Yeah, so they would have to submit an application a few weeks prior to the Board of Commissioners meeting. Depending on how heavy their agenda is, it may be put on a separate work session to be addressed separately from the rest of their agenda items.
Okay, so it's a matter of sometimes of just being able to get it before the board in the time, and get them specific time frame.
Yeah, generally, if you require something to have a special use permit, then you would go through the special use permit process first. And then they would come back once they have approval to have that use on that lot. And any conditions that were imposed as part of that special use permit would then be built into your commercial site plan review process.
Okay.
I make a motion that we return this text amendment to staff to generate it for proposal next month with more generic language for our review as a special use permit.
More subjective language?
Yes, so that would be appropriate for as a special use permit, but I want to return it to staff to rework the language with these 11 points in a more generic fashion so that it can become a special use permit, and we review it next month.
So it could become a special use permit as is, it's just restrictive.
Correct, it's too objective.
So you think it's too objective, too restrictive as is, you want it more subjective.
I want to give some flexibility to the commissioners, because the commissioners, if we make it this objective. And David, correct me if I'm wrong, if we make it this objective, the commissioners cannot make it more restrictive.
They could make it more restrictive.
They could.
They can make it more
They can make it
restrictive
more
than this.
restrictive.
Yeah, they just can't make
They
it.
can't make it less restrictive.
Okay,
They can't make
if
it
that's the
easier.
case,
Mhm.
then I change I make a motion to approve this text amendment as a special use permit
So
in B3.
so the motion on the table is to approve the UDO amendment as written. In a B3 zone, but make it a special use permit rather than permitted by right.
Correct.
All right, motion on the table.
I'll second the motion.
All right. All in favor?
Well, get it moving.
Sure. I'm okay with that too.
All right,
Unanimous.
unanimous. Later this month on the 19th.
Oh, one of the little pop-up car wash. Yeah,
Thank you all very much. Appreciate it.
and I guess, well. Now I see. I'm like, we don't need a. I know Ricky, I've been running for very long time.
Thank you.
Answer that question. I was wondering why all those guys. Right. Huh? That was fun.
Moving on.
Yep, I'm ready when you are.
Text amendment, TA 2024 TAC 05. Request to amend the UDO concerning regulation of private transportation facilities and taxi services. Take it away.
All right. Now that you guys have probably scared our applicant. This application is being submitted by William Edwards, I think he goes by Bill. Lives in Cape Carteret, like contact information there. Basically, he's asking that the town amend our table of permitted uses and section 6.2 RR transportation facilities private, which is basically a taxi cab driver service operating center. The request here is to amend number 1 under 6.2 RR to include the B1 zoning district in a location that is not facing Cedar Point Boulevard. I'm going to pull up our UDO here. and show you some of the language that we have here. Scroll down to our table of permitted uses.
Matrix.
Yep, so
Under transportation.
transportation, thank you. Transportation facilities, private, you see that they're currently permitted by right in an LIW with some additional provisions under 6.2.RR. I can scroll down there, but I'll pull them up here for you in just a second. You'll see all that language in the actual proposed language to be amended. 2, the applicant describing your own words why the ordinance amendment request is necessary. He responded that he worked for a local taxi cab company for 21 months. The business was sold, so he decided to open his own business. There are no available spots in the current LIW zone, and I'm very interested in opening my business in Cedar Point. He indicated that it will be of benefit to him because Cedar Point is a good central location for the surrounding communities and will allow him to service transportation needs in a timely fashion. That it will benefit the residents as responded to on this attachment. There's a great need for private transportation in our communities. Many families depend on private transportation for doctor's appointments, shopping, work, and other in-town or out-of-town needs. There's huge demand during tourist season. Thankfully, a lot of tourists use private transportation to go out to eat for nighttime entertainment. I feel access to private transportation allows us to help our families that do not have funds to purchase a vehicle and all the expense that comes with owning a vehicle. I feel it keeps our communities and roads safe for our friends who enjoy the nightlife. The specific language that you would see amended down at the bottom, it would update the table of permitted uses to reflect a P in the B1 column for transportation facilities private, and then also adjust the language specifically under subsection RR, which would say that the operating center is located within an LIW or B1 zoning district. And 2, an operating center located within a B1 zoning district shall not be visible from Cedar Point Boulevard, and unattended vehicles used in connection with private transportation facilities shall not be visible from a public street. Such unattended vehicles may be parked behind buildings, opaque fences, thick landscaping, or garages to meet this requirement. So those are the only proposed changes to the UDO. The zoning map under our zoning map, we only have one property in town that is zoned LIW, which is where basically Sanders Boat Works is back there behind Cedar Point Tire.
Yeah.
You should see some of the boats back there.
Oh, yeah, it's made right there.
Guys in Chile, I think that happens.
But that's the only place right now that it's currently allowed. He's asking that we allow it within a B1 zone, but not fronting on Cedar Point Boulevard. I understand he has a specific location already picked out.
1057 Cedar Point Boulevard. It's unit C2 and it's on the backside.
So where Piper and Grace used to be, if you know, right there at Prime Storage on the backside of that building. So the idea is basically nobody will know he's back there. Nobody will see the vehicles, but it does give them a good central location from which to operate out of.
And I add, I'll give a car wash also.
In B1,
Good.
you want it in B1, right? B1.
So, just my question, how many vehicles are we talking about?
Starting with one.
Start with one and see if you hire people. When my wife heard this, she goes, yes. What other public transportation is around here unless you go to CCATS or something? Or Uber.
And they're all.
Yeah, so, I mean. I don't know how much brings in the taxes, I don't know how that works as far as the town goes and that kind of stuff, probably Zippo. I'm trying not to. That's quick.
So we're saying not fronting on Cedar Point Boulevard. Does that mean it can be a property that abuts Cedar Point Boulevard, just the front of the building where the display of the business can't be seen from Cedar Point. Okay.
The vehicles can't be seen from Cedar Point Boulevard.
Other than a conglomeration of taxis, is there anything any reason we put this in light industrial?
So years ago, towns were very concerned about taxi services. You know, if you read through some of these requirements, you know, the list of requirements for this use, if you thought car washes were bad, you know, we have these dealing with one property where there could be a taxi service.
City.
Talk about felons in there.
Yeah, I know.
Convicted felon.
Yeah,
Something about prostitution.
Okay.
yeah. So it is highly regulated already. And it's generally one of those uses that's necessary, but you know, it's not something that you necessarily want out, you know, taking up your prime real estate for.
Like a lot of people. Right.
And I think at the time that they adopted it, they probably looked at it from the standpoint and said, you know what? LIW is good centrally located, but it's the only parcel we have at the time is behind another one.
Back in the back.
So this kind of is similar in nature, except it does open up more possibilities for locations. I mean, you do have several places in town where it could possibly go. For example, the site that he's looking at, as well as the pink building next to the new, or next to the old Cedar Point Tire, right? There's some office space on the backside of it. On the backside of, that's all used for medical right now, but the 3-story medical building, you know, a rear entrance there. I mean, there's places where something like that could be put in place, other than just one property.
Any other comments from the applicant formally at this matter?
Short, sweet.
Thoughts from the board?
So you answered my question on number of taxis for David. So years ago, this, I think it was presented to the planning board, and I think it went to the commissioners. We had 2 commissioner approved taxi companies within the town. Will he be required to get a license to operate into town?
Yes.
Okay, so then he'll become the 3rd that I know of, because you had 2 previous.
I think there's only one now. so-
One now, one active, and so he'd be number 2. Like license number 3, because the one went to the funk. Okay, so he would be licensed in this town too.
That one, just the one vehicle, they got, the one that's licensed, or, no, they just got one vehicle. They have one or two vehicles.
He's asking how many vehicles does.
Not yours, the other.
DV taxi had 4,
Oh, 4.
but they all were over 300,000 miles. That was the problem with their equipment. They just get with Band-Aids on it. So, you know, a little bit nicer vehicle. See if I can do a little more, you know. But they can have a lot of trouble with their vehicles.
David, and we have how many bars do we have in town right now? We got 2 bars? 2. And the treehouse might open up.
They've closed long enough, they'd have to have another special use
Yeah,
permit.
okay. All right.
Or
Okay.
you do have Christina's.
Christine, yeah, Christine,
The wine bar.
yeah, that's good. Yeah.
Okay. I got no more
But those
questions.
are those front Cedar Point.
I got no question. I got no further questions.
I'm good.
I don't have any other questions.
So land use standpoint, I'm not gonna walk you through all of it. But I did prepare both a for or against. But the for would be that looking at our land use plan goal L1, which requires us to look at the future land uses in the land use map. That this proposed use has been determined to be compatible with other uses in the B1 zoning district and would create a new small business for the benefit of the town's residents, which is goal T6. So that would be 2 goals that are implemented or impacted by this text amendment.
There's no public, I don't think, to give comment.
Well, you
They
know,
could if they
they're not
wanted
public.
to, but I doubt
They're not public. They're not public.
All
They're
right.
not even here.
I'll make a motion
Please.
I'll make a motion to accept.
I'll second it.
with
With,
The text
with
amendment.
the text amendment. Supporting the, as written on the screen
And the consistency.
and the consistency.
We're good.
All right, we have a motion to approve and a second.
Second.
All in favor? It's unanimous.
All right. Let's see. So the 19th, it'll go before the board of commissioners. It'll be very similar to
You
this.
talked me into it. That's okay.
Fortunately, you'll have
I tried to argue out.
Yeah.
Try.
We do it in the time.
There being two.
B one. Yeah, what is it?
All right, thank you.
Yeah, I didn't know, that's why. Yeah, I agree, well, I don't want.
That was
any-
under the screen.
I don't want any more car
Um,
washes. I don't want any.
are we off recording now?
No, we're
Oh,
still here.
we're still in session.
Yep.
Item 4 is to open for public comments. Any public comments? None heard. Moving on to item 5, comments from the board members.
Thank you for the good discussions and questions. I know David, the businesses, commissioners appreciate what we do up here because we tease apart all the different friction points and just makes for better presentation to the commissioners and so, but thank you.
I think they're late. No,
We have a motion to adjourn.
motion to adjourn.
Second motion. All in favor? We're adjourned.
What's next month? December. Oh, I'll be here.
December 3rd
I'll be here.
at 6:30.
I'll be here. I'll be here in January.